A reading from the letter of James. Come now, you rich, weep and wail over your impending miseries. Your wealth has rotted away. Your clothes have become moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and that corrosion will be a testimony against you. It will devour your flesh like a fire. You have stored up treasure for the last days. Behold, the wages you withheld from the workers who harvested your fields are crying aloud. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on earth in luxury and pleasure. You have fattened your hearts for the day of slaughter. You have condemned. You have murdered the righteous one. He offers you no resistance. The word of the Lord. You have condemned. You have murdered the righteous one. These are very strange words, perhaps, to end a passage condemning the sins of the rich or the sins of the abuse of wealth. And I wondered when I was reading them, is this something maybe peculiar to the first century context in which the author of James wrote, or is it something we can identify today as well? And one of the things that I immediately came to mind was Hoboken, New Jersey. Of course. About 25 years ago, Hoboken, New Jersey underwent an incredible transformation. It went from a place predominantly populated by poor immigrants, mostly made up of tenements, many of which were falling down, a lot of rent-controlled buildings, and it was on the waterfront, like the title of the movie that was set there, right across from Manhattan. And what happened was that developers started coming in and investing lots and lots of money to turn that area around and gentrify it. Now, these developers came in, and there was a problem. You had owners of buildings and slumlords who wanted to sell, but they couldn't because if you have rent control, you can't just kick the people out, right? So all of a sudden, mysteriously, in the early 80s, in the middle of the night, these fires started popping up all over Hoboken. And one night it would be one building, and another night it would be another building. And they were all in the same district, in the same area. Basically, you had whole families that were burned out of their homes and made homeless. In some cases, you had, in quite a number of cases, you had children, men and women, who were killed. The righteous were murdered. The owners of these buildings were then able to turn over the burnt-out properties for a nice, fat profit. They could then get another fire insurance policy, which wasn't that difficult to get, and get another building. And it was all over the news. And there's a very famous documentary that was made in the early 90s about this. In any case, that's a very notorious example of something that has happened and that can happen in our society today. That supports what James is talking about. A disordinate love of wealth, greed, that is so great that it can actually lead people, in order to support a luxurious lifestyle, not only to not pay fair wages, the way it says in the epistle, but to even go as far as to condemn and murder the just. So what hope is there? And is this the only thing we can be attached to? It's very easy for those of us who don't have a lot of wealth to point to the wealthy. Well, there's a lot of things we can be attached to. We can be attached to power. We can be attached to esteem. We can be attached to the need to be right. There are many things we can be attached to. And we can use these things, as political institutions and religious bodies have for centuries, to oppress and to even murder the righteous. So what is the hope? Well, I would say that the hope is the gospel of Jesus Christ. The hope is the divine human person of Jesus. Jesus is the one who teaches us to go from love of power to a radical posture of giving of self, of giving up power for the reign of God. Jesus is the one who presents us with the radical posture rather than loving wealth, to love generosity and to give of ourselves for others. But it seems that our human nature is so vitiated by sin that as much as we try on our own to do this, we keep getting it wrong. So what I would say is that we forget the power of the gospel. We forget that the sacraments that we celebrate, that the liturgy that we observe, derive their incredible power precisely from the mystery that they make really and truly present, which happens to be the mystery proclaimed in the Kerygma. We need to go back to the source, go back to the root, so that when we celebrate our liturgy and when we receive our sacraments, we can receive the full potency of what's in there. And if we do so, then hopefully on the last day, we will appear before the throne of God with wealth that will never rot away, with gold and silver that will never corrode, because we will be clothed with the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ.